What's this going to mean for Hong Kong either way? I mean, presumably, as I understand it, Richard, the markets love stability and no change, so they've obviously been signalling in favour of Remain for a long time. But, for example, if you did get a much lower pound, will we see everybody charging to buy that chic flat in Belgravia they've had their eye on for ages?
Yeah, I know. I'm certainly keen on that. I might be able to afford one. I think that there are some further issues, because if there is a leave, Roland's put his finger on it, is there's going to be an enormous amount of turmoil within Europe. That can't be good for growth. And Europe is by far and away China's largest trading partner. And whatever happens to China happens to Hong Kong. So there are some linkages. They're not going to happen next week, but there are some linkages that indicate that the direction of travel, if it is a leave vote, is not particularly positive for Hong Kong.
I mean, Lee Ka-sing, who is still regarded quite understandably as a great guru, has said very recently that he would not like to see the UK leaving. And, of course, he's got big investments in the UK, hasn't he?
Well, yes, exactly. And I think if you look at things from an overseas point of view, the overwhelming feeling from non-British people who I've talked to overseas, whether in the US or in Asia or indeed in Hong Kong, has been that Britain would be mad to leave. There's an ironic comparison with the Scottish referendum, when the very same people who are saying that Britain should leave Europe were saying, how can Scotland possibly survive outside the bosom of the United Kingdom?
But I think that's two very different things, though. For me, I'm an arch unionist because I've got English, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish blood in me, and it's very much more a blood thing with the Scottish referendum. With Europe, the vast majority of Britons do not feel part of this European project. I think it's much more of a pragmatic thing. And talking about pragmatism, the reason that I ended up voting for Remain, even though I'm not a fan of the EU project, is because of what Richard just said a second ago, which is about the impact it would have on Europe. I think that perhaps Europe is struggling a bit, as I'm sure Roland could much more elegantly describe, with immigration, with the rise of nationalism and populism on the left and the right, with economic turmoil. And the last thing, in my opinion, that the EU needs is a kick from Britain, which would lead to many different countries wanting their own referenda. And as Britain is still a big trading partner with Europe, that would have, as Richard just said, a big impact on Britain's finances. So although I don't want the UK to be beholden to Europe, I think that actually this is the good thing for the British economy. And anyway, as we've all said repeatedly throughout this conversation, the EU is going to have to change because of this, and I don't think staying in the EU is going to be a bad thing for Britain with the future direction that hopefully the continent as a whole will take now.
Can I just add one more thing and the implications for Hong Kong, which might be interesting for our listeners here? And this is because we have several thousand of British passport holders here in Hong Kong, and that will, of course, if the vote goes for a Brexit, it will very much diminish the quality of that British passport, because at the moment, if the British EU passport gives you access not only to the United Kingdom but to the freedom of movement within the whole of the European Union. If the United Kingdom decides to leave, then that will no longer be the case.
But that depends on why people want a British passport in the first place. Is it to go to Europe, or is it as an escape from Hong Kong?
But it is, of course, an additional benefit that, with the British passport at the moment, you can also live inside the rest of the Europe.
Are you worried about your passport, Ian?
If I can just chime in a bit there, because as part of what I do with InvestUK, one of the things I help with is migration visas and investment into the UK with the investment visa. So I've attended numerous conferences in China on this issue, and most of the European nations turn up there selling the idea that you can get, especially the people coming from Cyprus and Greece and other such areas, saying you can get a European passport and then you can go to Britain. So this is what they're actually standing out there and saying when they're selling their migration projects, their investment migration visas on the mainland in China. So it's very interesting. It's the other way around, actually.